To the people of Sangamo County. Fellow citizens, having become a candidate for the honorable office of one of your representatives in the next General Assembly of this state, in accordance with an established custom and the principles of true republicanism, it becomes my duty to make known to you, the people whom I propose to represent, my sentiments with regard to local affairs. Time and experience have verified to a demonstration the public utility of internal improvements, that the poorest and most thinly populated countries would be greatly benefited by the opening of good roads and the clearing of navigable streams within their limits, is what no person will deny. Yet it is folly to undertake works of this or any other kind without first knowing that we are able to finish them, as half-finished work generally proves to be labor lost. There cannot justly be any objection to having railroads and canals any more than to other good things, provided they cost nothing. The only objection is to paying for them, and the objection to paying arises from the want of ability to pay. With respect to the county of Sangamo, some more easy means of communication than we now possess, for the purpose of facilitating the task of exporting the surplus products of its fertile soil and importing necessary articles from abroad, are indispensably necessary. A meeting has been held of the citizens of Jacksonville and the adjacent country for the purpose of deliberating and inquiring into the expediency of constructing a railroad from some eligible point on the Illinois River through the town of Jacksonville in Sangamo County. This is indeed a very desirable object. No other improvement that reason will justify us in hoping for can equal in utility the railroad. It is a never-failing source of communication between places of business remotely situated from each other. Upon the railroad, the regular progress of commercial intercourse is not interrupted by either high or low water or freezing weather, which are the principal difficulties that render our future hopes of water communication precarious and uncertain. Yet, however desirable an object the construction of a railroad through our country may be, however high our imaginations may be heated at thoughts of it, there is always a heart-appalling shock accompanying the account of its cost, which forces us to shrink from our pleasing anticipations. The probable cost of this contemplated railroad is estimated at $290,000, the bare statement of which, in my opinion, is sufficient to justify the belief that the improvement of the Sangamo River is an object much better suited to our infant resources. Respecting this view, I think I may say, without the fear of being contradicted, that its navigation may be rendered completely practicable as high as the mouth of the South Fork, or probably higher, to vessels of from 25 to 30 tons burthen, for at least 1/2 of all common years, and to vessels of much greater burthen a part of that time. From my peculiar circumstances, it is probable that for the last 12 months I have given as particular attention to the stage of the water in this river as any other person in the country. In the month of March 1831, in company of others, I commenced the building of a flatboat on the Sangamo, and finished and took her out in the course of the spring. Since that time, I have been concerned in the mill at New Salem. These circumstances are sufficient evidence that I have not been very inattentive to the stages of the water. The time at which we crossed the mill dam, being in the last days of April, the water was lower than it had been since the breaking of winter in February, or than it was for several weeks after. The principal difficulties we encountered in descending the river were from the drifted timber, which obstructions all know is not difficult to be removed. Knowing almost precisely the height of the water at the time, I believe I am safe in saying that it has often been higher as lower since. From this view of the subject, it appears that my calculations with regard to the navigation of the Sangamo cannot be unfounded in reason, but whatever may be its natural advantages, certain it is that it never can be practically useful to any great extent without being greatly improved by art. The drifted timber, as I have before mentioned, is the most formidable barrier to this object. Of all parts of this river, none will require so much labor in proportion to make it navigable as the last 30 or 35 miles, and going with the meanderings of the channel, when we are this distance above its mouth, we are only between 12 and 18 miles above Beardstown. In something near a straight direction, and this route is upon such low ground as to retain water in many places during the season, and in all parts such as to draw 2/3 or 3/4 of the river water at all high stages. This route is upon prairie land the whole distance, so that it appears to me, by removing the turf, a sufficient width and damming up of the old channel, the whole river in a short time would wash its way through, thereby curtailing the distance, and increasing the velocity of the current very considerably, while there would be no timber upon the banks to obstruct its navigation in future. And being nearly straight, the timber which might float in at the head would be apt to go clear through. There are also many places above this where the river, in its zigzag course, forms such complete peninsulas as to be easier cut through at the necks than to remove the obstructions from the bends, which, if done, would also lessen the distance. What the cost of this work would be, I am unable to say. It is probable, however, it would not be greater than is common to streams of the same length. Finally, I believe the improvement of the Sangamo River to be vastly important and highly desirable to the people of this county, and if elected, any measure in the legislature having this for its object, which may appear judicious, will meet my approbation and shall receive my support. It appears that the practice of loaning money at exorbitant rates of interest has already been opened as a field for discussion, so I suppose I may enter upon it without claiming the honor or risking the danger which may await its first explorer. It seems as though we are never to have an end to this baneful and corroding system, acting almost as prejudiced to the general interests of the community as a direct tax of several $1,000s annually laid on each county for the benefit of a few individuals only, unless there be a law made setting a limit to the rates of usury. A law for this purpose, I am of opinion, may be made without materially injuring any class of people. In cases of extreme necessity, there could always be means found to cheat the law, while in all other cases it would have its intended effect. I would not favor the passage of a law upon this subject, which might be very easily evaded. Let it be such that the labor and difficulty of evading it could only be justified in cases of the greatest necessity. Upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in. That every man may receive at least a moderate education, and thereby be enabled to read the histories of his own and other countries, by which he may duly appreciate the value of our free institutions, appears to be an object of vital importance. Even on this account alone, to say nothing of the advantages and satisfactions to be derived from all being able to read the Scriptures and other works, both of a religious and moral nature, for themselves. For my part, I desire to see the time when education, and by its means morality, sobriety, enterprise, and industry, shall become much more general than at present, and should be gratified to have it in my power to contribute something to the advancement of any measure which might have a tendency to accelerate the happy period. With regard to existing laws, some alterations are thought to be necessary. Many respectable men have suggested that our estray laws, the law respecting the issuing of executions, the road law, and some others, are deficient in their present forms, and require alterations. But considering the great probability that the framers of those laws were wiser than myself, I should prefer not meddling with them unless they were first attacked by others, in which case I should feel it both a privilege and a duty to take that stand, which in my view might tend most to the advancement of justice. But, fellow citizens, I shall conclude. considering the great degree of modesty which should always attend youth, it is probable I have already been more presuming than becomes me. However, upon the subject of which I have treated, I have spoken as I thought. I may be wrong in regard to many or all of them, but holding it a sound maxim that it is better to be only sometimes right than at all times wrong. So soon as I discover my opinions to be erroneous, I shall be ready to renounce them. Every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Whether it be true or not, I can say for one that I have no other so great as that of being truly esteemed of my fellow men, by rendering myself worthy of their esteem. How far I shall succeed in gratifying this ambition is yet to be developed. I am young and unknown to many of you. I was born and have ever remained in the most humble walks of life. I have no wealthy or popular relations to recommend me. My case is thrown exclusively upon the independent voters of this county, and if elected, they will have conferred a favor upon me, for which I shall be unremitting in my labors to compensate. But if the good people in their wisdom shall see fit to keep me in the background, I have been too familiar with disappointments to be very much chagrined. Your friend and fellow citizen, Abraham Lincoln. New Salem, March 9th, 1832.